Okay, welcome to Plato's Republic, Book 3. And in Book 3, Socrates and his friends continue to discuss the ideal city, and in particular, the education of the citizens. And the citizens are going to be split up into 3 groups, we get told. Commoners and tradesmen and workers, labourers, they're the people at the bottom. And let's call them the iron or bronze group. And it's just because we're going to find out about a little lie that Socrates plans to tell everybody in this ideal city. Is a noble lie, like a white lie, I suppose. And he actually talks about 3 different categories, 3 different metals well, you will find out about that lie in a moment. But the commoners are iron or bronze, let's call them, that level. Above them will be the auxiliaries, who are like the soldiers, the warrior class, and they are silver. And from that warrior class, the very best of the best, those who really put the interests of the city in front of their own interests, above their own interests, they will be called the guardians, and they are gold. They're at the top of this hierarchy, because clearly this is a hierarchy. But how should all of these citizens, and they do make it clear, we're talking about the education of the guardians and the auxiliaries and the commoners, although the guardians will learn different things than the commoners, because the commoners will learn their skills, their trades. But still, we're talking about the education of the guardians in particular. Socrates speaks a lot about, not about Hades, about Homer and Hesiod. And he talks about the parts in those stories that he really doesn't like. He thinks that some of these stories are very dangerous, and we need to censor these stories in this ideal republic if we're going to create a strong warrior class, then we mustn't tell them stories of Hades. Hades is the Greek underworld, as a terrible place. We shouldn't describe Hades, death basically, as a terrible place. Otherwise, they'll become afraid of death. If we keep telling them stories about how terrible death is, and Hades is a pretty terrible place in Homer, well, then that won't create courageous soldiers. Okay, so there's a strong theme of censorship running through Plato's Republic. This is not going to be a place where you're allowed to say anything you want, and certainly not a place where you're allowed to teach the young anything you want. And I find this quite ironic because of how Socrates died. He was accused of corrupting the young of Athens, and that's why he was killed in the end. That's why he was punished. But so Socrates explains that men, they must fear slavery more than they fear death. These guardians must fear slavery more than they fear death. If they don't, well, then they'll betray their city, because they'll be so afraid of death, they won't have the courage necessary to put their city first, to put the interests of the city in front of or be above their own interests. And that's why he really doesn't like this line. This is a famous line from Homer, I think. I'd rather be a serf on the land of a poor man and alive than rule over all the dead who have come to naught. Than rule in Hades. He'd rather be the poorest man but alive rather than the king of the dead. Because the king of the dead, well, that's not a nice place to be, according to Achilles. And remember that Achilles was the kind of ideal Greek warrior. And Socrates doesn't think that this is a good hero to teach the children of the ideal republic about. He thinks that this will make cowardly men and not courageous men. It will make people. It will create cowards. Telling people about Achilles. Telling them Homer's stories. And so he wants to breed this warrior class with a very stoic attitude. Now, I've done a video on the Stoics, a lesson on the Stoic, but what I mean is a kind of unflinching in the face of death attitude. He talks about how a good man will not wail and lament his friend's death. Yeah, he won't, he won't be screaming and shouting and bawling his eyes out just because his friends died. No. And it sounds like he won't even be sad. And that's a very stoic approach to death, yeah, where you're not even sad that your best friends died. But that's what he wants to see among these guardians, that kind of attitude, okay? And so very much we see a lot of self-sufficiency is considered